Jack and Liz, 10 years ago today, you were both covering the biggest story in our region, one of the biggest in the country. Where were you both in your careers in 2015 when the prison escape happened in Dannemora?
Well, I was a brand new reporter. I was only 6 months into my career here at NBC5. I started out as our Upper Valley reporter, so I was covering mostly New Hampshire and southern Vermont for the station. But when this story broke, we needed all hands on deck. Everybody had to go to northern New York to help out with our coverage. So that's what I did. And I learned a lot during that time, needless to say.
Thrown into the fire.
Yeah, literally.
I was actually working for a division of NBC Universal at the time, and I was filing reports for NBC stations across the Northeast, including NBC5, but also my stories were airing on stations in Hartford, a regional cable network out of Boston, in Portland. So I think Liz and I had different jobs. She was really focusing on granular details about the North Country, areas where they're searching, advice to keep people safe, really public safety issues. I was really interested in capturing broader stories that would be interesting to someone in Boston, universal themes, like the idea of schools being shut down. I mean, that's something that you can relate to in any town in the USA, and this was a fascinating story worldwide, not just in the North Country.
Absolutely.
Do either of you have a very vivid memory of the entire coverage of their escape and the manhunt?
Well, it sort of varied. I mean, as it went on, initially it was in Clinton County and everyone was in the Plattsburgh, Dannemora area. I remember vividly going through a lot of roadblocks. Our news cars had to get searched. Everybody's cars had to get searched when you hit one of those roadblocks. Knocking on people's doors. People were afraid to answer their doors. And that's something as journalists we do quite a lot. We're used to door knocking. But to have people literally afraid to open up and just say hello, that was kind of scary. It just really spoke to the climate in the North Country at the time, that people were terrified. They had no idea where these people were. And then as the search went on, weeks and weeks went by, it ended up in Malone. And that was a little more challenging too, because it's just more rural than Plattsburgh even. So these houses are far apart. There's no cell phone service. It just made covering the story, I would say, a little more challenging.
One memory I have was I was live on the air right outside of Maggie's, right near the prison in Dannemora. And, I was giving my report, and apparently right behind me, some members of law enforcement were searching the area of a manhole. And a producer got in my ear and said, "Jack, look over your shoulder. There is an officer putting a dog down a manhole right behind you." And so in the middle of my live report, I just changed gears completely with what I was talking about and walked over live on television and tried to ask this guy a couple questions about the ongoing search. And that to me was one of the, I think, universal memories that a lot of reporters had, because things were changing so fast. You thought you would be covering one thing and then something would be changing. And that is one of my most vivid memories to this day, is that picture of the not just dogs, but men coming out and women coming out of manholes where they were searching for evidence of where Matt and Sweat had come through. It was wild.
Unforgettable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Liz, you mentioned challenges. What was so challenging about covering this escape and the entire manhunt?
I think just honestly being, how do I put this? I think honestly just, it was really scary for these people, and I empathized with them. I know how scared they were. And part of me, I felt bad for maybe, knocking on the door can be just really scary to somebody during that time. So I didn't want to cause even more fear to somebody by knocking on a door and they're, afraid of that. So just really talking to people was a challenge. Just real people in their homes. Everyone was in their homes. No one was really walking their dogs. It was almost like the pandemic when people were holed up at home. It was similar to that, I would say.
A practical challenge that we encountered too was lack of cell phone infrastructure. In some of these communities, you know, right near the prison, it's not bad, but some of these communities where they were searching, like out by Owl's Head, boy, it was really hard to get a cell phone signal. And when you're a reporter out in the field, you have to be on the phone with the newsroom. You know, you're using social media to try to see where people are sharing photos from, and without a cell phone for, you know, a couple of hours, that was tough on us.
I can imagine. And Jack, you at that point had had some years under your belt of experience as a journalist. Was there anything that could have prepared you for this coverage?
I don't think so. This was so out of left field for me. The closest thing that I could compare it to was Tropical Storm Irene 4 years earlier. Of course, a natural disaster, not a man-made emergency like the one in Clinton County. But in terms of the scope, the coverage area, you know, with Irene, we were covering a huge swath of emergency. Same thing in the North Country. I mean, the concerns were there, whether you were in Plattsburgh, Dannemora, Malone, and all points in between. Just having such a huge territory to cover was really tough.
Sure. Yeah. And talk to me about the atmosphere of the newsrooms that you guys were working in and what that communication was like.
Honestly, I sort of joke with people now that it was kind of like news camp. You know, everybody was together. You know, all the reporters, we were briefed in the morning about what neighborhoods we were all going to go to. It was a really kind of a bonding experience, I would say, for our newsroom, because we were all in this together. You know, we were all working these 12-hour days, sometimes 16-hour days, every day of that prison break, nonstop. We had like basically no days off. But it was really thrilling, you know, to be covering this story. We knew it was a national story and actually an international story. Some international publications picked it up too. So just to know that that this was happening in our backyard, I felt a real sense of duty to cover this to the best of my ability, and certainly my colleagues, I think, felt the same. But it was very stressful. You know, I remember the newsroom had, I think we had at one point a masseuse came in because like people were so tense, like people needed to like relieve all of that stress by working all these long days. So it's just
I wish I had known about that.
I know.
That apparently,
Bring them back.
that
Yeah,
apparently was a day that I was too busy out in the field. I love what Liz said, because news really is a team sport. You know, yes, individual reporters are covering individual stories, but they're all part of a newscast. Whether it's an hour-long newscast, a half hour, you know, it's all one product. And we really are very collaborative. People who are watching at home may not know that, but we're always helping each other out. You know, maybe one reporter is with the governor and asks a question that's helpful for another reporter's story. That's the kind of thing that behind the scenes happens all the time. It was probably never more impactful than during the coverage of this. We were really all helping each other out, sharing information, sharing sightings, tips, things like that. I think it was a good moment for journalism in that way.
Yeah, I think so too.
A true public service.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys learn, and what did you take from your experience of the coverage a decade ago, and how have you applied it to the journalism that you do today?
This story was really a reminder that the news does not operate in a bubble. Mm-hmm. The news operates in communities. Mm-hmm. People are impacted by the topics we talk about on the news each and every day. And yes, this was a story about 2 escaped murderers. Yes, this was a story about state agencies responding to a disaster, to a crisis. But at the same time, this was a story about John and Jane Doe sitting at home in Dannemora, in Malone, in you name the community. This was personal to them. This was their safety. They were afraid that a convicted murderer could come walking through their backyard. That was terrifying. This was a story about people. And I think that that crisis was a reminder that really all news stories are, at the end of the day, about our neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a phrase that I've certainly heard about our industry, that reporters meet people on either their best day or the worst day of their lives. And that really felt real in this situation, that it was a lot of people's worst nightmare to be dealing with this situation. The reality that there were 2 convicted murderers just out and about, no one knew where they were. So it taught me, as a brand new reporter, just the importance of having empathy for people. That if people, you know, were afraid to talk, that was okay, and you had to respect that. And people who were comfortable talking to me, I was so grateful. I've always been grateful for anyone who wants to share their stories with us, especially, you know, when you're on a story, getting that really impactful interview. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get, but when you get someone who's comfortable enough, it's a real honor that they trust you enough to share their story. So I definitely learned that lesson covering the prison break.
And people were grateful for the coverage. I vividly remember an experience I had the day after Richard Matt was shot and killed. He was shot and killed on a Friday. And I was reporting live from the police barracks in Malone on Saturday, the next day, about the ongoing search for Sweat. And a lady saw me on NBC5 and just went to the convenience store and picked me up a bag of pretzels, a bag of gummy bears, and a seltzer, saying, I know you have, and all reporters, all local reporters have been out here working long days for weeks, and I just wanted to make sure that you were not doing this on an empty stomach. That was so kind, and I guarantee you I did not have lunch that day. So the fact that this woman gave me that snack was so wonderful, so sweet of her, and I really appreciated it.
Well, and in that same vein, I remember a vivid memory that stands out to me in the Malone and Owl's Head area. Again, it was so remote, you know, homes are far apart from each other. We had no cell phone service. One thing people may not realize is it was hard for us to get access to use like a restroom because things were so far away. And I remember, you know, we were with a bunch of other media outlets, and this woman like opened up her home and was like, you know, come in, use our bathroom if you need to do that, you know, grab some water. Just people's kindness, that does stand out to me too.
It really shows the spirit of the North Country.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing to look back at your guys' coverage 10 years ago to our coverage now, even reflecting on those 10 years. So we appreciate your guys' work. Thank you guys for sharing your insight.
I hope we never cover something like this again,
I
Lauren.
hope so
Same.
too.
I don't want to work that hard ever again.